Hey, what's up guys? Today, I'll show you a horror drama film, Stake Land, Part 1. Spoiler ahead, watch out and take care. The movie begins with a young dark-haired boy named Martin riding in a car with an older man called Mr. He narrates that he lives in a dangerous world, and he has to live by the rules of survival that Mr. taught him. Loud screams and screeches are coming from the car trunk, and Mr. riddles the backseat with bullet holes. Martin continues his narration, saying that he was a normal child with a family in the past. But everything changed when the plague came. A flashback reveals that one night, Martin and his parents were planning their escape when they were attacked by fearsome creatures. The parents died, and Martin was saved by Mr. They then went inside the garage, and Mr. took on the vampire inside. He asked Martin to help him by finishing off the zombie with a hammer. Martin complied. In the corner of the garage, Martin's father lay dying due to the wounds he received from the vampire. He was going to turn into one of them any minute. With his last breath, he begged Mr. to save his son. Mr. then killed the father. Martin has been with Mr. ever since. Mr. has been teaching him the necessary survival and fighting skills as they trekked across the decaying country. When the plague of vampires came to the country, everything descended into chaos. People rushed to flee, and the cities became death traps filled with vampires. Martin narrates that in the aftermath, government officials chose to save themselves instead of helping the people. The remaining survivors formed cults that believed in extreme ideologies so they could make sense of the tragedies that happened. Mr. and Martin are now in search of the elusive place called New Eden, which is purported to be a safe haven for the remaining humans. One day, they are stopped on the road by a group of armed men that belong to a cult. They inspect Mr. and see that he and Martin are carrying wooden stakes. The leader assumes that they are vampire hunters, and he asks Mr. how many he has killed so far. Mr. takes out a small pouch from his pocket, and he shows the leader the several vampire teeth inside, one for every vampire he had killed. The leader chuckles and lets the two of them pass. Soon after, they arrive in a small town where several survivors have gathered and are trying to make a semblance of society. Mr. takes Martin to get checked by a doctor and then get a haircut afterward. They continue the journey and encounter a nun screaming frantically on the road, trying to run away from two hormone-strong men who were trying to force their hormones on her. Mr. saves her and kills the two men. They take the injured nun to a house so she can recover from her ordeal. Mr. and Martin work on setting up a perimeter trap so as to guard them against the vampires. Mr. even cuts Martin's finger and lets the blood drip so they can lure some vampires to them. Sure enough, a vampire smells the blood later that night and triggers their trap. They lure it closer to a bear trap, and the steel jaws successfully catch the vampire. The nun awakens and recognizes the caught vampire as a fellow nun. Mr. and Martin go outside, and Mr. uses this as an opportunity to train Martin further. Martin lands some blows, but he misses the heart, which he needs to penetrate in order to successfully kill a vampire. Mr. reprimands Martin for his mistake, and he stakes the vampire through the heart. The nun runs toward them and screams at them to stop, but it is too late. Mr. buries the vampire and gives the nun time to say her goodbyes to her shitty friend. Later on, Mr., Martin, and the nun get captured. It turns out the two men that Mr. killed were members of the fundamentalist cult that now has a stronghold in the area. One of the men was the son of the cult ruler. He now intends to seek revenge on Mr. The cultists tie Mr. up and leave him to be killed by a vampire horde. They also take the nun as their slave. Meanwhile, Martin is loaded into a van and is about to be taken back to the headquarters of the cult so he can be converted into a follower against his will. Later, Martin escapes the camp, but he has no choice but to leave the nun behind. He goes through the forest so he can be unseen. He now believes that he is alone because Mr. is already dead. But against all odds, Mr. manages to escape from the vampires as well. The two of them reunite, and Martin stitches up Mr.'s wound. They arrive at the next town and stop there for the night. Mr. trades his last remaining valuables, including his hard-won vampire teeth, for drinks at the bar. There, Martin meets a young, sexy girl with a beautiful voice named Belle. It turns out she is pregnant and she is hoping to get to New Eden and give birth there. Mr. and Martin take Belle with them in their car. After a day of travel, they find a seemingly empty house they can stay at for the night. They find a couple of dead bodies inside and they properly dispose of them. However, when Martin goes upstairs and inspects a child's bedroom, he finds the young girl hiding in the corner. She is already a vampire, and she attacks them. Mr. holds her down and instructs Martin to stake her in the heart. Martin is a bit reluctant since the girl is so young, but he knows there is nothing more that he can do for her. So he plunges the wooden stake into her chest. They continue their journey and cautiously make their way through the cult's territory. They find a man who was locked inside a portable toilet. The man, called Toilet Man for short, reveals that the cult left him inside as bait for the vampires. He also reveals that the cult made the plague worse by deliberately sending truckloads of vampires inside cities so that the government would collapse and the desperate people would join their cult. With Toilet Man's help, they set a trap for the cult leader. They pretend to be members of the cult and they launch a surprise attack on them. They torture the cult leader to get him to admit where the nun is, but he just says that she escaped from them. Mr. then ties the cult leader to a tree and leaves him behind for the vampires to kill. The group's next stop is a settlement where a lot of survivors are rebuilding their lives. To their surprise, the nun is also in the settlement. Apparently, she managed to escape from the cult and found the settlement. The group happily attends a joyous celebration that night. Belle asks Martin to dance, and the two young people have a brief moment when they can be normal again. Unfortunately, the cult had learned that the leader was killed, so they are now retaliating by airbombing the settlement with several vampires. This causes the survivors to panic and flee as the vampires start attacking them. Dejected, Mr. and the rest of the group decide to continue to go north to New Eden. However, their car breaks down later. They are forced to continue on foot and they stay in a junkyard for the night. But suddenly, they are attacked by several vampires. Mr. recognizes them as the oldest and strongest type of vampires. The group runs and they reach a massive cornfield. The nun decides to sacrifice herself by leading the vampires to another direction. When she is about to be overrun by them, she shoots herself in the head. Belle struggles to run, but Toilet Man helps her, and the 4 remaining survivors escape the vampires. After that, they set up a campsite in the woods. They huddle inside an abandoned bus and try to get some sleep. In the morning, Mr. wakes them up and says that Toilet Man is missing, together with his toilet. They search the woods for any sign of him. To their horror, they discover Toilet Man's body strung up from a tree. He was meticulously covered in a blanket, but his body bore the marks of a vampire. Mr. comments that he had never seen a thinking vampire before who could do this. He warns Martin and Belle to be careful because they are dealing with something new. Belle is now starting to experience cramps, so Mr. carries her. They sleep again at the campsite, but Belle is kidnapped by the mysterious creature stalking them. Martin and Mr. hear her screaming from inside an abandoned silo in the middle of the woods. Mr. declares that this is a trap, but Martin doesn't care. He rushes inside the silo and finds Belle tied up and wrapped in barbed wire. Mr. gets cornered by the mysterious vampire, who turns out to be the cult leader. It turns out he willingly gave the vampires his blood, so when he was turned, he retained his consciousness and memory. Because of that, he now has the powers of a vampire and the same greed and evil that he'd had when he was a human. Moreover, he killed Toilet Man and kidnapped Belle, so he can exact his revenge on Mr. The cult leader is about to land the killing blow on Mr. when he is struck in the back by Martin. However, Martin's strike is too weak, but it is enough to distract the cult leader, giving Mr. enough time to hit the cult leader and slay him. Unfortunately, things are too late for Belle. She was bitten and is now dying. Martin kills her, so she wouldn't have to endure the horrifying fate of being a vampire. It is now just Martin and Mr. again. They continue on the road until they stop in front of a diner. The woman who lives there points a crossbow at them, thinking that they are vampires. When realizing they are humans, the woman named Crossbow dropped her weapon and invites them in. She is a young and pretty blonde woman about Martin's age. The two of them spark up their hormones pretty quickly. That night, Mr. secretly watches them from the corner as they shoot the approaching vampires from a distance. He is glad to see that Martin has gained confidence and skills. The young man even ventures outside and easily handles a shitty vampire. Mr. now knows that Martin is ready to be on his own, and he will be fine because he is no longer the scared little boy he saved. So he decides to sneak out of the house. In the morning, Martin discovers that Mr. is now gone, and he had left his beloved skull necklace for him. He and Crossbow decide to start their own journey north to New Eden. The movie ends with Martin and Crossbow driving away with hopes in their hearts for a better future. This is Daniel CC Movie Channel. Stay safe and enjoy your day.